Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, and while I do some contract work for the HBAR Foundation, I don't do these weekly updates in any official capacity. I'm just coming to you personally to give you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. But as always, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. So the first thing we want to get into is something that we knew was coming, and that was the appointment of a new president to the Hedera Governing Council. What we didn't know, and what has exceeded expectations, is who, and that's Charles Adkins. So Charles has already held prominent roles in the crypto ecosystem, including as vice president at Polygon Labs and most recently as the global lead of business development at Aptos. He was also a consultant at the US Treasury, worked at Disney, and held key marketing positions at Red Bull and Nike. Upon joining Hedera, he said, "I've always been very interested in the Hedera protocol and the technology, but equally, if not more importantly, in the governance model and the impressive global governing council. Over the several decades that I've been in technology, I've seen that enterprise and government adoption holds the promise to enable the use of new technology by the masses. Hedera's approach to governance and relationships with some of the world's largest organizations has put them in a great position to be the distributed ledger technology of choice for the largest use cases requiring scale and security." So I want to welcome Charles to the Hedera ecosystem. He already seems very engaged with the Hedera community and has already agreed to do an interview in the new year, so I'm really looking forward to that. Now, we had a really important piece of news come out of Fresh Supply Co. this week, and while I really want to cover it, Rob did a fantastic job going through the entire thing, so let's go ahead and check out Shark Bites. Welcome back, Rob. How you doing this week?
Hey, Brandon. Yeah, it's been another great week in the Hedera ecosystem. I want to do some rapid fire questions today because there's a lot of backlog, so let's see what we can get through.
That's fair, but to start off, Rob, there was an announcement that was made this week around something that we've discussed in the past, and that's Fresh Supply Co. and the continuity tooling that they have. Would you mind just discussing your take on the new information that we got around Fresh Supply Co. this week?
Yeah, so this is something that Fresh Supply Co., who are a great Australian-based business, I've been talking to David Indiris for what seems like years now. It's probably only a year, and they'd always planned to extend off of the Hedera consensus service into the Hedera token service. This is all part of the roadmap. As a quick refresher, they've moved off of the private permissioned MasterCard provenance blockchain onto Hedera. So they're providing all of the integration, the provenance type capability using the Hedera consensus service that they'd previously done on that chain, while maintaining all the payment triggers out into MasterCard. So it's a great relationship. It's a great kind of leveraging of the MasterCard network within the agricultural supply chain and supply chain financing in particular space. So that's the business. What Fresh Supply Company also did and recognized that there were other provenance users who would also need to move off of provenance as it sunset. And so continuity as an API was and is the technology provision that Fresh Supply Company provide to do that. And the continuity API now exposes the Hedera token service as well. So customers and clients of Fresh Supply Company can access all of the Hedera token service within the set of capability that they expose, which is, amazing. It allows for a kind of a more straightforward payment conditionality. So these payment triggers can be kind of pre-programmed, or they can carry that makes the payments more conditioned or more based on the assets that they carry, the payload. And it allows for ease and efficiency in tokenization for things like debt objects, NFTs that represent debt assets. This kind of fits into the wider narrative of real-world asset tokenization, and obviously using Hedera makes the whole thing scalable. So the Fresh Supply Company focus area for customers that might use this are in the banking space, funds that might be providing for supply chain finance, and also ESG applications. So they're exposing and will integrate Guardian tokens into this proposition as well. So the Continuity API allows access to all of that Hedera tokenization goodness, but within the context of the use cases that Fresh Supply Company provide for. And then finally, the integration with MasterCard payments also extends into the MasterCard multi-token network, the MTN, for messaging purposes. So that's I think that's a roadmap item, but it's a fast follower. It will be coming fairly soon. So conditionality for minting tokens. These NFTs can provide for things like tokenized deposits, and for people who aren't fully aware of that nomenclature, tokenized deposits are like traditional finance tokens, the tokenization of representing the proof of a deposit having been made. And those proofs are very important when you're looking to finance supply chains or get access trade finance within supply chains. So these are all the things that Fresh Supply Company are exposing as part of this ongoing integration of Hedera, but making it particular in real world applications. So very, very exciting.
Well, this is how ecosystem is built. Now, Fresh Supply Co. is building a lot of this stuff because they needed it, but they know that there's others that could use it as well, so they're making it as easy as possible for them to use it as well. All right, so the first community question comes from Engine, who asks, what will Hedera look like in 2024, and can you provide a roadmap for Hedera Q1 to Q4 2024? Now, of course, there is an official roadmap, but Rob, what are your thoughts on how next year's going to look?
So, yes, there is an official roadmap, and I'm not going to talk beyond that. It's on hedera.com/roadmap, I think. We're tracking really well to the roadmap. A lot of the work in the last year has been focused on EVM compatibility, on providing the tooling for easy migration off of other EVM chains. And I think the Swells Labs team have done an amazing job doing that. All the core engineering is done either by Swells Labs engineers or by their partners. So all this, this roadmap that you can see on the website is being exercised by that under the direction of the tech committee, the Governing Council Tech Committee. So if there's any reprioritization of that roadmap, it's discussed in TechCom. And Lehman co-chairs that committee, but it's a council committee, and therefore any changes to or reprioritization needs to go to the council. Of course, we've got the HIP process, and so we've got a constant flow of HIPs, which is then discussed and then incorporated and prioritized within that roadmap as well. So there's a kind of gentle shift sometimes depending on those prioritizations. One of the big things I think that is coming to bear now is all the tooling and support systems around community nodes. I know community nodes are a hot topic in the community, and rightly so. So those are some of the things that will be completed over the course of the next year. I don't know when community nodes will be fully released, but it is a priority. And then there are a number of other aspects that are all listed on that roadmap, which we talk about at TechCom and are being actively worked on. But I do recommend any community members that want change, the HIP process is there for you, right? So you don't have to kind of sit down and write a HIP on your own. You can kind of do it through the Discord channels and get consensus from the community group. You can work with the Foundry to craft these HIPs. There are some very experienced HIP writers in the Foundry, or reach out to the developer advocates and discuss those changes. That's what it's there for. I mean, we've got an open source system, and we've got mechanisms for community to recommend change. So that roadmap isn't necessarily set in stone. You've got some big milestones there, but in amongst all of those big milestones, we can influence and direct changes that the community thinks is necessary, and we've got many examples of that happening. So, 2024 is going to be a big year. I think we're going to be scaling massively. We've got hopefully a lot of strong market sentiment growing through next year, and a lot more adoption. So, it's going to be a good year, 2024, I think.
Fair enough. That's what I'm looking forward to. All right, Rob, we have one here from Celestial Being. EDF just completed their POC. How much TPS should be expected once they move their POC onto the mainnet in the future?
So this is a great use case, right? It's a sustainability and Guardian use case. It's EDF, who are, for those who don't know, it's a French company, biggest energy supplier in Europe, and the biggest supplier of renewable energy certificates, so RECs. And so what the Guardian ecosystem and Envision and Sustainable Impact Fund with EDF have done is created policies for RECs or IRECs with recursive labs and REDX. So EDF, REDX, and Recursive Labs have kind of the tech stack that provides these RECs. Now, the question's about TPS. So I've done a little bit of back-of-the-napkin calculation on this. So don't hold me to it, and it's certainly not financial advice, but it was a real eye-opener. The market for IRECs in 2030 is said to be $70 billion, right? So $70 billion. It's about $19 billion now, up to $70 billion by 2030. So a $70 billion market means an IREC, it represents a certificate for 1 megawatt hour having been produced. And that certificate on the markets at the moment goes for between 30 and 70 cents, US cents. So quick calculation, $70 billion in 2030 at 70 cents. Let's assume it doesn't change, but it's a quality token on Guardian. That's 100 billion tokens, right? So the target addressable market for this one use case in 2030 is 100 billion tokens. Now, if we assume that we get revenue, transactional revenue on the Hedera network of 1 cent, and we talked about this the other day for Guardian tokens, it could be 5 cents. It depends on the number of transactions. But and I don't know anything about the policy that relates to this token, but let's assume that it's a whole bunch of Hedera consensus service transactions and a token minting, followed by a couple of token transactions. So let's say it's 1 cent full life cycle per token. So 100 billion times 1 cent, it's 100 billion at 1 cent, that's 1 billion. For one use case, target addressable market on the Hedera network, $1 billion per year. And at, I don't know how many seconds a year, about 31 million seconds in a year, that equates to about 160,000 transactions a second. It's a lot.
It is a lot. Next up, we have a couple that are on the same topic. First, Jason Hills asked, could staking returns theoretically go all the way to zero? And if not, will they ever potentially go back up towards the other direction? Asked as an enthusiast. Mike Blaisdell asks, staking program works great. Apparently 6.5% was too optimistic for sustainability, but now 1.2% pretty much stinks. Any chance you could bump this up to 3 or 3.5% for 2024? It'd bring in a lot more folks and builds loyalty and buzz.
Yeah, I wish I could bump it up. I don't have that power. The discussions around native staking and native staking rewards went for a long time, and as was just stated, 6.5% was never going to be sustainable long term. It was a great bootstrapping mechanism. It was the same time, if you remember, as we had our DeFi ecosystem coming together. We had our DEXs kind of stepping up, and a lot of interest, right? So I think it was entirely legitimate. However, going back years, there was native staking on Hedera is different to other chains, and this term de minimis was always used for native staking, in addition to the other types of staking that decentralized finance offers. So it was always intended to be a sustainable, steady state background staking reward for that supported the proof of stake nature of the Hedera network. So will it ever go to zero? Well, it won't ever go to zero, because that would mean that the Hedera network was no longer functioning and wasn't receiving network fees. but it will die down, and it will become a background reward for staking to the nodes. And as we grow through community nodes and then full decentralization, and as the network grows and the revenue grows, this all kind of changes. So the algorithm really, in a steady state, and we're not at steady state yet, but in a steady state, is that network fees, a proportion of network fees, go to the account that feeds account 800, feeds the network rewards. And so, very simply put, the network fees earned on one day get distributed the next day. And then, as the network fees grow, so does the rewards. But we will hit a steady state where that happens. And I can't say where that is, and I can't say what de minimis actually means in at the moment in terms of actual numbers. But it's one part of the overall benefit of securing the Hedera network.
And I will add one thing, that right now they have earmarked for 10% of the fees to go into account 800. So
That's right,
earmarked for those staking rewards. Now, right now, that is fairly low, but in time that could build up to substantial amounts. But we'll see what it looks like in the future. All right, so the next one comes from Dude Man 2, who says, HBAR doesn't get love from retail and needs enterprise to own HBAR to drive value, in my opinion. Does enterprise need U.S. regulatory clarity for them to get off the sidelines? Does HBAR need community nodes for retail to get off the sidelines? Are we stuck in no man's land until these issues get resolved? So what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, there's a lot mixed into that question, isn't there? It's not, and I don't actually agree with the premise as well. So let's pick it apart a little. Everyone in this space needs clarity, regulatory clarity from the US and the SEC, but actually we're a global network, so there are plenty of other regulatory jurisdictions where things are becoming a lot clearer. And on a global network, value will flow where there is regulatory arbitrage, where there is ease of utility and freedom, right? So I don't think we're restricted. It's very easy from a US perspective to think of it like that, and it is a massive inhibitor to growth of the entire system. But I don't think it forces enterprise onto the sidelines. And we've seen many of the governing council actually, now implementing solutions. So, we've had Toco for years now, and DLA Piper. We've got, obviously, Atma and Avery Dennison. We've got a ServiceNow. We can list them all, but there are plenty of examples where enterprise are not on the sidelines. And as we keep talking about, enterprise is slow in terms of adoption, and we're still very early, but I think over the next year or two, it's not an inhibitor. And so I don't think that enterprise are on the sidelines. I think one of the things that would be useful to have, and there's active discussion about this, is how enterprise manage HBAR treasury, how some enterprise are unfamiliar with holding HBAR or receiving HBAR. So, those things are, maybe a small hurdle, which will be fixed and is being fixed in order that they can integrate fully and utilize the network fully. So that's hopefully dealt with that part of the question.
I'm sure if I can figure out how to hold HBAR, enterprises can do the same.
Well, they
right?
can, but it's still seen as crypto. It still requires internal policy change. There is risk associated with that, and risk officers within big corporates hold a lot of sway, and it's easier to say no than yes. So there are a lot of hurdles to clear in order that happens. But we've got plenty of examples now of leaders in this space, and they're not exposed at all. So it's just really about the risk being accepted by the business, and that business needs sufficient commercial outcome to make that decision. So that's why pilots, proofs of concept and pilots happen, because that builds the case for the business to make those business decisions versus the risk that they perceive. The second part of the question is about retail not giving Hedera love. Again, I don't think that's necessarily true. We've seen some lovely retail love over the last couple of weeks, and I don't think it's on the sidelines either. We I won't talk to price, but you can, Brandon. And I think we're at the start of a kind of long run up to something that's pretty good. So I don't know that is true. Some commentators would like it to be better than it currently is, but swings and roundabouts. Retail need to use Hedera, right? You need to have the apps. They need to use Twigital. They need to use Galaxy. They need to use Yango and the NFT marketplaces, which are all brilliant, right? So that's where retail can make a difference. Don't consider HBAR to be a speculative instrument. Use the tools, because the utility is what drives the growth of the network. And don't just be a user of one of the apps, be a user of all of the apps and immerse yourself in the Hedera ecosystem. That's how things change. So that would be my recommendation for that.
I think that's a good recommendation. All right, so the next one comes from Johnny Cash, who asked, HSBC announced they will launch a crypto custody service. My thinking is that the coming crypto banks will fuel many new retail users, as many don't feel comfortable with self-managed wallets. What has and is being done to expedite crypto banks taking custody of HBAR? So what are your thoughts on this?
So custody is a big, big topic. So we have self-custody, so in your wallets, or we have custodial solutions. We have custodians, and we have custody or custodial technology that can be implemented by licensed or regulated institutions like banks. So it's not just how do crypto banks hold your keys. This is about regulated institutions having crypto-based offerings or digital asset offerings, and how they provide that to their customers. So we as the Hedera ecosystem work with a number of custody technology providers and a number of custodians of that technology. So organizations that hold the asset on behalf of either the bank or the customer, or the custodial technology companies such as Fireblocks or Metaco. There's a whole bunch of them. These are technologies that are implemented within banks in order that the keys can be safely and securely stored on behalf of their customers. So one of the approaches that we see in most banks that are dipping their toe in the water, and we've got some crypto first type banks like Signum in Switzerland and the others, or we've got the HSBCs or ANZ Bank here and many others across the planet. They are tending to implement the custody technology solutions because they then have confidence in being custodians of their customers' assets. I mean, it's a multi probably billion-dollar business now for these technology companies. They've become the unicorns of the crypto space very, very quickly. I don't see that changing. So every bank that wants to offer a crypto-based solution or a digital assets-based solution more properly, with real-world asset tokenization, becoming the next big wave, need a custody solution, and that's what they're implementing. And HBAR is integrated with all of the major ones, and Hedera Token Service with most of them.
And I do want to add a couple of things. Hex Trust is one of the companies that offers custody solution for HBAR. They've been around for a long time. We've just started working a lot more closely with Archax. There was some announcements over the summer. They're, of course, working with Aberdeen, and they just announced this past week some additional support for custody within the Hedera ecosystem.
Yeah, that's very exciting.
It's the first steps, and hopefully eventually it'll be the Fidelities and the Vanguards of the world as well. All right, so the next one we have comes from Tom Johnson, who asks, is there any functional drawback to still being in beta? Do prospective enterprises push back against that and say they won't proceed until we're out of beta? Or is it all semantics? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. It's actually not very clear to me either what beta means at this stage. I know it's a topic of discussion at the council and has been. I think we will just wake up one day and the council's decided that we're out of beta. I don't think there's anything specifically, any particular milestone that has been set. Maybe I haven't been paying attention in TechCom. no enterprise has ever said to me through the enterprise program that I was running or any of the council interactions I've had that beta prevents them wanting to engage with Hedera. It just doesn't ever come up. So the answer is no, Tom.
Okay, fair enough. All right, next up we have The Fool, who, and I think you're going to have some pushback on this one. The Fool asked, most enterprise use cases in the DLT space are being snatched by R3 Corda and Hyperledger. How does Hedera plan on getting these institutions to choose them and become the foundations for being the trust layer of the internet?
Yeah, don't agree with that question at all. Okay, so let's pick this apart. R3 Corda was always set up to be finance focused and was and is a consortium of banks primarily and isn't a public chain like ours. Hyperledger, and by that I assume the question means Hyperledger Fabric, is because Hyperledger is a project run by the Unix Foundation and has all sorts of different technology. In fact, Hedera is part of the Hyperledger project because it's shared open source with the project. But Hyperledger Fabric as a private permissioned ledger is still alive. I'm not sure that it's actually flourishing. Many of the Hyperledger projects actually are failing, unfortunately. I've had firsthand experience of that, but also there are many, I won't list them, but there are many that have failed to succeed because there's actually very little business case for a private permissioned ledger anymore. The reasons for a private permissioned ledger tend to be around commercial sensitivity and privacy. And there are other ways of doing that now with the technology through selective disclosure or ZK proofs. So enterprise use cases and enterprises are going through that phase that every new technology seems to go through where the walled gardens start falling, right? So in the early days of the internet, we had walled gardens that believed that they were going to be the winning technology and kept their customers enclosed. Same thing happened with mobile phone networks. It's only when you break those walled gardens down, you create the bridges, the interoperability, the standards that enable the flow of customers and data between them, that everything scales. So we're going through that phase now, I think, with blockchains and distributed ledger technology. There won't be one chain to rule them all, as we keep saying, but some chains are better than others and have a greater applicability across multiple use cases. So the special purpose chains may survive, may even thrive in their specific use cases, but the generic ones and the scalable ones, or one like Hedera, will survive them all, I believe, because of this kind of generic nature. And enterprise are moving from that phase of wanting to put their arms around everything and protect everything to recognizing that actually interoperability and scale is far more important in terms of the tide lifting all boats. So,
and a perfect example is what we saw from MasterCard Provenance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's I spoke about that earlier, and it's exactly the right example of why a massive organization like MasterCard realizes that a private permissioned ledger just doesn't serve its purpose. It's too heavy a lift. You may as well just have a distributed database, and we've had those for decades. So when we get to this place, as we are now, this inflection point where enterprise is actually realizing that real-world asset tokenization is this next big phase, and it's a multi-trillion-dollar market that they need to be informed and ahead of the game in order to survive within. Public ledgers are the only way. And so that's where we are. And Hedera is perfectly placed as the ledger of choice for enterprise to do real-world asset tokenization.
That's what we want to hear, Rob. All right, so we're going to do one more from CryptoCash, who said, what are some of the goals and expectations of governing council members in joining the council? How satisfied are they on how things are being run and the current state of the Hedera network?
Oh, that's a great question. So 3 years ago, or 4 years ago maybe, when the council started forming, council members didn't have to come with a use case. They came out of interest. They came out of wanting to be involved in something which they didn't fully understand, but to learn on the way. And one or two came with, an idea about a use case that, has developed over time, which, like DLA Pipe is Toko, it's poster child of security token platform that, is still growing, and it's an amazing story. But then we've got the Aberdeens, and we've got the Avery Denisons, and we've got all the others kind of coming together right now. So, and we've talked about this in the past. MEMCOM is the organization or the committee which vets the applicants for the governing council now. And the bar is raising. And the council members that come now are educated on what it means to be a council member. They are trained on, what it takes to be a council member. And they are coached in terms of their use cases so that they come with something that is, reasonably well formed. And then through MEMCOM and CorpCom and the Hashgraph Enterprise Program, we can implement those. We've got, a track to implement those use cases now, which we didn't have 3 years ago or so. So the maturing of the council and the council instruments and organs has both enabled council members to get to the point where they need to be, which is full participation, skin in the game, and fully activated and engaged members of the council. So all of those barriers have now been removed, and the funnel is moving them through. But also the bar has been lifted because we've only got 10 seats left, right? until we start rotating. So it's taken a little while to get there, I think, but I feel like all of these pieces are in place now. So the expectations may be very varied, when a council member gets introduced into the fold, but through, the HBAR Foundation, the Hashgraph Association, through Hedera itself, the introduction of new potential council members into that funnel sets expectations right. And so all the new members that have been coming on over the last year or so have very clear view of what the expectation is. And I spoke to most of them in Singapore recently, and they're all very excited about how these use cases, how they're going to make a difference to their own business. This isn't about education and information anymore. This is about how do we actually stay ahead of the game and make a real difference to our business.
It seemed like there was a lot of energy coming out of that meeting, for sure.
Yeah, there really was.
All right, Rob. So I know we didn't get to all the questions we wanted to get to. Our queue is certainly swelling. I took a lot of the questions I got from Mance and Shane, and I brought them over to our queue. We're knocking through some of those as well. But we won't be doing a Shark Bites next week. The following week, we're going to do a nice wrap up and do the top 10 of 2023 for the Hedera ecosystem. So that's going to be a fun one. But Rob, thank you again for your great insights this week. And I'm looking forward to talking to you here in a couple of weeks.
My pleasure, Brandon. I'll see you soon.
So during Shark Bites, you heard me talk about Archax, and there was some additional news that came out this week. So it looks like they're going to do some additional support of Hedera native staking on their platform, as well as pursue further tokenization projects to add on top of the Aberdeen multi-billion-dollar money market fund that was tokenized earlier this year on Hedera. Discussing these latest developments is the CEO and co-founder of Archax, Graham Rodford. Graham said, as an FCA-registered digital asset exchange, broker, and custodian, it is vital that we use credible technologies. Hedera's technology and ESG credentials are excellent, and we're pleased to have integrated support for their network and look forward to working together on other new tokenization projects. Additionally, Aberdeen, who sits on the Hedera Governing Council, is the largest external shareholder of Archax, which further strengthens our partnership. For anyone that doesn't know, the FCA is the Financial Conduct Authority. They are the financial regulator there in the UK. So that makes Archax one of the only regulated entities of its kind, nearly completely focused on crypto in the UK. Shane, the CEO of the HBAR Foundation, also had some comments. He said the Hedera network is the best choice for institutional-grade tokenization, offering a robust platform specifically designed to meet the needs of enterprises and the scale of the largest financial institutions globally. With high performance and scalability, Hedera is establishing itself as the technology layer for institutions and their evolving financial strategies. Together with Archax and its partners, we're looking forward to accelerating the establishment of Hedera as the preferred choice for institutional-grade tokenization. So for anybody that's interested in real-world asset tokenization, Hedera is certainly a place to keep your eye on. All right, so next up, we have one of the most exciting things you can do in the Hedera ecosystem, and that is up-only gaming for the Strike League Karate Combat. Now, we have the largest event in the league's history happening tomorrow night, and here to give us the inside track is Dane Curley. He's an insider with Karate Combat and knows everything about all the fighters that are going to be fighting on the card this weekend, so his insights are going to be invaluable to help us out with our up-only gaming picks, so check it out. Dane, welcome back. We have an amazing fight coming up this weekend.
Oh my gosh, we have a few amazing fights coming up this weekend. And in fact, I dare say that this is one of those situations where the main and the co-main are equally important. So I'm really excited about KC43, and it's in Las Vegas. That's the fight capital of the world, man.
Awesome. It's going to be so much fun. Now, we're not going to go through every single fight, but we're going to go through the majority of them, and you're going to give us some more information. If people want to do a deeper dive later on, they certainly can. Now, just to give everybody a heads up of what up-only gaming is, Karate Combat has an app, right? And what you can do is when you download that app, you'll get some karate tokens that are built, of course, on Hedera. The whole thing is built on Hedera. Or you can go out and get them in airdrops, or you can get them on the open market. And then a few days before these fights, the entire card opens up and you can place the karate tokens on the fighters that you think are going to win. If they actually win, you get more tokens. If they lose, you don't lose any. So you can't lose in terms of karate. But if you did go out in the open market and buy them with US dollars, you could potentially lose in dollar terms because the value of the token could go down. But then again, it could go up as well. So just a quick warning there. But with that, we're going to dive right into these fights. We're going to start off with the bantamweight fight of Jordan Barker and Damian Villa. Now, I know Damian struggled a little bit in his last fight, but how do you see this one going?
And I think this is going to be a very competitive fight. However, Jordan probably is the more well-rounded fighter with the more appropriate background for Karate Combat, but he doesn't have 4 pro fights in the division. So, I think Villa should probably, despite the bad record, 1-3, I think he should probably open a slight favorite, but it's going to be a competitive fight.
And the last Kumite fighter we saw had a highlight reel knockout, but each one of these is going to be individual. So that was at bantamweight, and we have another one at bantamweight, Laxabi Matalavan and Gabriel Diaz. How do you see this one going?
I think this is a difficult fight for Gabo for all the reasons mentioned. Mm-hmm. I think it's a fight he can win, but people will probably lean for Laxabi Matalavan.
Okay, fair enough. We're going to move up to lightweight and talk about somebody that you just mentioned. Now, that's Rind, 6'1" lightweight, enormous guy. And he's going to be going up against Federico Alvela. What do you see this one doing?
I think you'd have to be pretty crazy to bet against Shazay Rind here. I expect he will be a wide favorite on the Karate Combat app, especially because people have seen him before. They've seen what he's capable of inside the pit. The Karate Combat fans know him. And I just don't think that Avella in particular is, I just didn't see this as the matchup that's going to beat Shazab. But he'll be a competitive fighter, but I think Shazab is going to get it done.
I think you're going to have a favorite in this next one. Another lightweight bout between Elijah Everill and another from the Kumite, Javier Arteaga. Now, the last time, like we mentioned before, the last time we saw somebody from the Kumite come into the pit, he had a highlight reel knockout, right? But I think this one might go a little bit differently, but I'm going to find out here in a second. So what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I think I know what you're touching at. I think in this case, the gentleman from the Kumite is going to find himself in a position where the highlight reel knockout is happening against him. I think Elijah Everill is what you call a stud of fighting. I just think Elijah's going to be elusive enough, and the techniques that he has, if you're going to go try to wrestle him or, take him down anyway and close that distance, I think you'll find a lot of spinning back kicks headed towards your gut. I think you'll find a lot of, just so many strikes in his arsenal. And he's so long, Elijah. He's tall and long. And if he wants to play the distance game, I think he'll be able to play it. He has the skills. And I think he's somebody to keep your eye on as a future champion. Right. And I do think that if you're watching the sport for the first time, make sure you've got the card on early. Don't miss these early guys. Elijah is somebody to watch. I think Like I said, if he loses, it would be one of the biggest upsets of the card, if not the biggest.
All right. Well, I like those definitive calls. We've had a couple of them now. We have an interesting one coming up next. This is at catchweight, or a catchweight. Shannon Hudson versus Shinzo Machida. Now, that is the brother of Lyoto Machida, the former UFC champion. So we're talking about some serious pedigree here. But Shannon seems like he's a character. What do you have on this?
I think this is, to the surprise of many, it probably should be a pick'em, just given the experience and the shape of how many fights that Shannon Hudson has had and how devoted he is to this fight. I've heard from some of the guys in Karate Combat that he is just taking this beyond seriously, and he has a lot to lose. I think he has probably more to lose than Machida. Machida has a legacy and family name, but everyone already loves him, right? With Shannon, he's going to be introducing himself to people, and he's introducing himself in the most serious striking sport against one of the most serious people in karate. So I think he has everything to lose, and his company's reputation is going to be on the line in certain ways. And I think that takes a lot of gusto. However, I will be picking and putting my karate tokens on Shinzo Machida. Okay. So I will say that. I think that it's fair that the odds should be kind of closer. But yeah, I'm going to be betting on Shinzo. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Shinzo's, and I think you got to also look at that he's trained a couple of Karate Combat fighters. Most notably, I would say Bruno Souza, who was able to fight for the title. He didn't win, but he fought for the title. And so that Machida style has had success here. But Shannon's big and strong, and nobody's beyond getting knocked out in that pit. So.
All right, good to know. Next up, we have the inaugural championship women's bantamweight fight. Now, this is Amira Molina and Melinda Fabian. How do you see this one going?
I think that there's going to be a favorite, and it's going to be Amira Molina. But I think that this fight is crazy, and these women, their fighting styles are a not so comfortable matchup for each other. They're both bull rushers. They're both willing to get hit, to land hits. They both leave their fights beat up. I think that this is a dangerous fight for either woman, and I don't know who to pick, because in a fight like that, it can be over at any time. If you're willing, if your strategy is that I'm the toughest, and you go up against another fighter and their strategy is I'm the toughest, whoa, that could be a hard day at the office. Because if you're not leaning on precise technique and strategy to keep yourself safe, and you're leaning on I'm the baddest man in town, or in this case, baddest woman in the pit, you might incur some damage. And I expect both of these women will incur damage. So I'm very on the fence here. I have not made my pick yet for this fight.
Well, and one thing with Karate Combat, this up-only gaming, you can put less tokens if you don't have much convictions, or no tokens on a fight at all. So that's fair as well. Next up, we have welterweights Gorgon Slavsky and Brandon Jenkins. I have no clue. How do you think this one could go?
So this is a tricky one. Gorgon, they call him Go-Go, and Go-Go is a champion in his discipline, which is bare knuckle boxing. Now, he does train with the Goat Shed, led by President Asimov. So I think they chose Brandon Jenkins because if he starts slow, you've got Go-Go, who's Go-Go, the nickname speaks for itself. He's coming, and that's how he fights in bare knuckle. But coming into Karate Combat, being able to be leg kicked for me is I need to see how a guy reacts to that before I can put any karate tokens down on him. I just need to see it. I cannot bet on someone in Karate Combat who I've not seen take a kick to the shin or the calf. It's so critical to your durability in this sport, in this particular sport. Brendan Jenkins can throw leg kicks. He's not a soccer player caliber leg kicker. He's not like a Jose Aldo or this great leg kicker, but he can do it. I'm sure his shins are more conditioned through a longer career inside a more varied sport. So no doubt about that. And I know he's going to have this in his game plan. I'm going up against a boxing champion. I'm not going to box him.
There you go.
He has wins by flying knee. Brandon Jenkins does. So he can finish fights. I just don't know if you want to bet against him, given double-digit losses means that a guy with punching knockout power can get the job done. This fight for me is if you like the cut of someone's jib, put a small amount of karate tokens down on them. Like you said, it's up only gaming. So if you're already in the app, if you already have your karate tokens, you can do it. Or if this is one of those where you don't want to put it down, I'm a firm believer in choosing based on confidence. And you may have 90% confidence in one of your picks and only 15% confidence in another pick. Well, you don't have to put down 15% on the fight where you have only 15% confidence. Or you could put 15% of your tokens on that fight and put 90% on another. And you could only pick one fight if you just have like, this guy's going to win for sure. You can put all your tokens onto that guy. So you have so many options.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Next up, we have a legend in Raymond Daniels at middleweight, and he's going up against Adrian Hadrabayev.
I think that this fight is separated by a wide margin in skill and in cardio. And I just don't see, and maybe even in durability. In the previous fight, Hadrabayev was injured. So that was an excuse that was levied for why it was more competitive in his opinion. He had a torn ACL. But to me, if you're tearing ligaments in fights, that could be a sign of recurring injuries. So, there's a lot of concern there. And I didn't see somebody who's going to beat Raymond Daniels in that fight. On the other hand, just to play devil's advocate, there is a blueprint to beat Raymond Daniels, and that's being shorter, stockier, more wrestle focused, and lowering your center of gravity, and letting Raymond come to you and not trying to go into his attacks. And that's exactly what Rafael Agaev did to Raymond Daniels successfully. And let me tell you something, he blew away Raymond Daniels on the scorecards. So Hadrabayev does have a blueprint, but I don't think he himself is at the caliber of Rafael Agaev. So this could be a competitive fight. I do not want to denigrate Adrian. He is a talented guy. But I think that Raymond should win this fight. And if I were betting, I would not put money on Adrian unless he was a wide enough underdog that I could stake a little bit to gain a lot. So I'll put it that way.
That's all fair. And now we have the co-main event between the middleweight champion, Ross Levine, and Sam Alvey, smiling Sam Alvey.
When I spoke to Ross, he was very humble. He always is. I think he's probably more humble than he needs to be. He was saying like, well, I got to focus on him. I got to take him seriously. He's a big boy. He definitely has KO power if I put myself in a stupid position. But just the fact that he's talking like that they're not seeing past Sam Alvey, that they're not taking this win for granted, that to me is just putting more and more and more and more into the, okay, I think Ross got this kind of side of things. On the other hand, Sam Alvey definitely is larger. He's been at heavyweight, even though it's not his original weight. He has been there longer. He does have more experience inside that division and carrying that size. And I think he's going to be willing to get hit to land his own hits. I think he's going to put a lot of pressure on Ross, but we saw that happen to Ross with Igor de Castaneda was a pressure fighter with just as much knockout power as anyone on the world. Igor de Castaneda's punching power is mind-blowing. Okay, I mean, mind-blowing. And so we know that Ross can deal with these kinds of threats, and we know that Ross can slow the tempo down of a fight and pump a jab and throw dangerous low kicks that slow you down. And I just don't see a way for Sam to win on strategy. I think he needs to make a dog fight and possibly land something sneaky in a close range situation. I'm not going to see him winning the distance fight. I'm not going to see him winning a slow paced fight or a decision. I just don't think that's possible for him. But I think he's aware. I think Sam Alvey's a smart guy too. But listen, I'm putting a lot of tokens down on Ross.
All right. That says a lot right there. Now, the headliner is huge, right? We have two former UFC champions at lightweight, Anthony Pettis and Benson Henderson, and they have some history.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about what to expect here?
Yeah, it's a great way to introduce them, former UFC champions. That is no small task to become a UFC champion. So you know that these guys have a legacy and have skill and have talent. No question about that. You've got a history here. there was a fight in a predecessor organization to the UFC, which was called the WEC. It doesn't predate the UFC, but it fed into it, lower weight classes. So there was a time when the UFC did not have a flyweight division or a bantamweight division or maybe even a featherweight division. I believe UFC started at lightweight, and the WEC had those divisions, so the UFC incorporated them. So that's where Pettis and Benson come from. They come from WEC, which was a very legit organization. It's also where many famous MMA fighters came from, including Jose Aldo, including Uriah Faber. Big names in MMA in the lower divisions came from there. Pettis beat Benson with a just chef's kiss kick called, what are they called? The Showtime kick, named after Pettis, whose nickname is Showtime Pettis. So, and that is, I love my finger demonstrations. He kicked off the wall, off the cage wall, and landed the kick that powered through. I mean, you got to watch this highlight. Hopefully you could cue it up for people. I don't know. But my friend, it's been 10 years. Neither of these guys have stopped fighting. They both went into different leagues from the UFC, Pettis in the PFL, and Benson Henderson into, I believe it's Bellator, and they both kept fighting. I believe, this is just my opinion, that Benson had the better post-UFC career. I think he fought higher level talent, and I think he did better against that talent. So that to me is tremendous. It's in my assessment, that matters big, because aging as a fighter, when you're as active as these guys and you're not as inactive the way we were talking about Shinzo Machida, who has no mileage on him, you accrue miles and you accrue damage. And I think Pettis has taken a lot of it. Don't get me wrong. Benson's been in wars as well, but he's had more success more recently. And when I say more recently, I kind of mean over the last 5 years. So no small stretch of time. So I think a lot of people are saying the pit favors a style like Pettis. And they're right. Pettis' style is flashy. It's perfect for karate. I mean, he's a perfect prototype for a karate combat fighter, archetype of a karate combat fighter. However, durability is something you need to rate highly on your calculations for who you're going to bet on in fighting sports. And I think Benson is probably far and away the more durable fighter today. And that goes to what you're saying. He's a guy who can get Showtime kicked and live to tell the tale. I think Pettis is further out of his prime, but has the better style for the fight. So it's so tricky, man. It's so tricky. I think it's going to be a treat, this fight, for the fans. No doubt about it. I don't want talking about miles and talking about durability, and this guy's had a weaker post-UFC career. I don't want that to distract people from how entertaining this fight's going to be. I don't mean to denigrate these guys at all. These guys are not what you call has-beens. They're fighting in leagues that are relevant, and they're fighting younger guys, and they're living, this very difficult life at the top of the sport, and they're coming here to focus on striking. And I do think that they're both phenomenal strikers. It's going to be a treat. It's going to be a treat.
Well, I can't wait. I'm going to be out there live at the event, so I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, lucky dog.
If anybody wants some more information, maybe the actual odds when they come out, can you tell them where to look?
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at Dane Curley, before the Y, or my partner in crime. We go over the betting odds together. That's Nick Kalikis, and you can find him at Fight Odds, also on Twitter. So check us out. Give us a follow. It means a lot to us. It keeps us creating content based on Karate Combat and betting odds and the Karate Combat token and the Karate coin. I mean, we love to do it, and I'm so grateful to you for having me on for all these events. It's a blast. I think I probably dragged on way longer than we ever went before, so feel free to edit the hell out of me, my friend. I'll forgive you. Thank you so much for having me, and I can't wait for this event. There's so many great fights to look forward to on December 15th. So,
well, Dane, it is absolutely my pleasure. I love talking about this stuff. Thank you for stopping by. And I also want to highlight that I got on the other side of the camera and got interviewed by Jack with Kabila. Of course, Kabila app is doing a great job in our space. He just did an interview with Ed Marquez from Swirlds Labs. That was really good, so check that out this week. I think mine's going to come out next week, but here's a quick teaser. I think one of the things right now that people get concerned about is the attention that falls on other networks. And is that something to be concerned about in the long term? It's not. Number one, Hedera has this base of technology that already creates a bit of a moat. I do think it's head and shoulders above much of the competition. Now, the marketing or whatever it may be from these other networks can gain tremendous attention. And Ethereum has done amazing things in building a community and a developer pool and everything else. But I think when actually tested, when trying to realize the potential of DLT, I think when some of these other networks are pressured, there's going to be cracks. And I'm not trying to bash, but cracks are going to appear. And I think when Hedera is tested, it's just going to prove out what we're capable of. And that doesn't necessarily mean Hedera becomes the chain to rule them all. I think there's going to be a lot of success, and that pie is just going to continue growing. So there's plenty of room for everyone. But I think when tested, Hedera is going to prove itself out, and it's going to create one heck of a niche. Now, Jack is quickly becoming a superstar in the space. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope I can have additional conversations like that with Jack in the future. All right, so the last thing before we get into network analysis that I want to get into is VR Jam. Now, this isn't the first, and it's certainly not going to be the last, but it actually came over from Polygon onto the Hedera network. And just to get a little bit into their business, VR Jam creates VR environments for creators, events, and brands. They incorporated a digital marketplace as well, and are also moving into the Web3 gaming space. And I have a feeling 2024 is going to be the year that Hedera gaming really starts to heat up. Now, this is exemplified by what was just announced by the Hashgraph Association and Spiegelworks, where the Hashgraph Association announced strategic funding. And Spiegelworks' mission sounds really in line with what Hedera is trying to do, creating the gold standard of Web3 gaming. And with that, let's go ahead and get into some network analysis. When looking at throughput over the last week, we see that there's a couple of dips. And as we explained last week, this is usually when the largest user of our network, Avery Dennison's Atma.io, is tweaking something. But also, as discussed last week, when it comes back, it usually comes back with a vengeance. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. Over the past several hours, the Hedera network has been processing just under 3,000 transactions per second. Because of that, we should be crossing 1 billion weekly transactions pretty soon. We also hit a max TPS of nearly 9,000 this week, and all of that while maintaining a time to consensus finality, true finality, of just under 3.5 seconds. Account creation has also been on a tear with just about 150,000 created in the last 7 days. Looking at our fungible tokens, Xbucks of the travel company Zenny is in the top spot with over 110,000 transactions. Zenny will definitely be one to watch next year. Wrapped HBAR, Karate, Energy Trade Token, and Sauce are next. We also see both the native and bridged USDC tokens, the meme coin Zero, Dovu, and Exos round out the top 10. Looking at the NFTs, one of SaucerSwap's liquidity tokens takes the top spot, followed by Blade Wallet Loyalty Token, a Slime World token from Nada, again going back to Hedera Gaming, the Karate Combat themed Karateka Golden Gi, the Times, H Barbarians The Lost Ones, Cream Tubs, an Earthlings Apparatus NFT, Shroomies, and the Zero Pixel NFT round out the top 10. I do want to bring up Sphera World, which we talked about the past couple weeks, has their NFT sale ongoing through Headstarter, and there's just a few left, so if you want to grab one, now's the time. The other thing that I want to mention is Michael Bannister. I saw some of his really creative NFTs, and I thought they were pretty impressive. This one's my favorite, and it's not just because the HBAR bull is across the forehead. And now, let's move on to some Hedera DeFi. Taking a look at DeFi Llama, not including Stater Liquid Staking, the total value locked in the Hedera DeFi ecosystem is up to $48 million. Almost $44 million of that is on SaucerSwap, and still about $3.3 million on HeliSwap. Taking a look at the returns on some of SaucerSwap's popular trading pairs, HBAR version 1 is at 3.7%, 5% for V2, 15% on HBAR Sauce V1, and 26% on HBAR USDC V1. On HBAR USDC version 2, we have 138%, and I'm just starting to test out version 2. I'll let you know how all that turns out in a few weeks. And finally, we have 51% on HBAR Karate. That has gone up because most have pulled their liquidity for Karate Combat 43, as the returns for those events are absolutely off the charts. Over on HeliSwap, HBAR X is at 2.7%, 93% on HBAR Heli, 16% on HBAR USDC, and 22% on HBAR Karate. Moving over to the crypto and HBAR markets, risk assets like stocks and much of the crypto complex has been on a tear this week after the Fed held rates steady and indicated an expectation of 3 rate cuts next year. As discussed in the past, higher rates weigh on risk assets as capital flows into what is thought of as risk-free return in treasuries, so the potential for lower rates is welcome. That said, Bitcoin and ETH took a break, being down slightly over the past 7 days. But many altcoins have done very well, including HBAR, which at the time of recording is between 8.1 and 8.2 cents. That's up 5% on the day and nearly 20% on the week. Things are looking bright, but if we do take a dip, which wouldn't be a shocker, we might catch some support at about 7.6 cents and certainly between 6.8 and 7 cents. If we keep heading north, like mentioned last week, I would look to 8.5 cents and 10 cents for resistance. So things are certainly looking bright for the Hedera ecosystem. We also have a couple holiday parties out there for HBAR variants. We have Hella Future Buzz, who's doing hers today, so check that one out on X. We also have another one on X from Genfinity. That one's going to be going on tomorrow, so certainly check both of those out. I have an interview next week with Mance Harmon and Shane Higdon, so that one's going to be exciting to watch, so tune in for that. We also have Rob Allen and Zep going to be joining me again for a countdown of 2023. And that's pretty much all we have. We'll see you again soon.